Hello, I'm Diane Porter, and welcome to the wonderful world of birding. If you're interested in birds, you've got a lot of company. Millions of people already enjoy watching birds, and more are taking it up every day. In fact, birding is one of the fastest growing outdoor activities in America. If you'd like to get in on the fun, this video is for you. It's designed to give you a good, easy start in birding. There are no prerequisites, other than the natural desire to know more about the beauty of the world around us. This video will teach you the basics of bird identification. You'll learn how to use a field guide, and you'll also learn how to choose and use binoculars. By the time you finish watching this video, you will be well on your way to knowing many of the techniques used by expert birders. You'll know everything you need to begin enjoying birding right away. But first, let's try to answer the question, why are so many people drawn to birding? Why birds? People have always been fascinated by birds because of their beauty and their marvelous power of flight. But birds have often held a deeper significance in human culture. For example, the ancient Romans believed that the flights and calls of birds could foretell the future. In fact, that's where we get our word auspicious. It comes from two Latin words, avis, which means bird, and specere, which means to see. And in Roman times, the sighting of certain birds was considered an auspicious event. Today, modern science still uses birds as a kind of oracle. It's now known that changes in bird populations can reflect the underlying health of the environment. That's why scientists consider certain birds to be indicator species. For example, the decline of the spotted owl in the Pacific Northwest is important because of what it may forecast about the future of the entire forest ecosystem. Birds are important to mankind. The knowledge of birds can help us plan a better, more sustainable relationship with nature. But why do individuals engage in birding? Let's take a minute to look at some of the personal benefits that birding can bring to you. Many people take up birding for their health. Hippocrates, the ancient Greek, who's considered the father of medicine, taught that a man's legs are his two best physicians. And medical doctors today still recommend walking for its outstanding health benefits. Birding naturally pulls you out of doors and gets you walking. And after an enjoyable morning's birding, you've usually covered quite a bit of ground without even thinking about exercise. And this pleasant activity is something you can keep doing all your life. People of all ages enjoy birding. Birding is also the ideal social activity. It unites people across generations. And by taking up birding, parents can introduce their children to an interest in nature that'll stay with them all their lives. A birder need never be lonely. Nearly every community has a birding club of some sort. And because birders just love to share their knowledge, newcomers are always welcome. Yet, sociable as it is, birding is also the ideal solitary sport. There's a special pleasure in going out alone to bird. Your mind settles down, your senses open up, and all nature seems to become your friend. Birding is a sport of many moods, and it serves the causes of companionship and solitude equally well. Birding is a very satisfying activity. Not only is it fun, but something deeper seems to get fulfilled. Maybe this is because birding arouses our primeval hunting instincts. It delivers all the satisfaction of a hunt, even though the prey itself always escapes completely unharmed. Birding also fulfills another basic instinct, the quest for knowledge. Birding is a process of acquiring knowledge, not just about birds' names, but also about their songs, their behavior, and how they relate to the rest of nature. Birding provides a perfect opportunity to enjoy a unique human pleasure, the successful exercise of lore. In fact, amateur birders often get to make real contributions to scientific knowledge. Today, much of what ornithology knows about birds has come from the observations of ordinary but dedicated birders. Birding is a quest. You set out to see birds, but the prize you come back with I can only describe as happiness. Learning to bird is like getting a lifetime ticket to the theater of nature. One of the advantages of birding is that you don't need a lot of fancy stuff to get started. There are 3 tools that you do need for the sport of birding. First is a notebook that'll fit in your pocket. The notebook is for your field notes. It lets you record your sightings, and it actually helps you to see, because when you try to write a description of a bird, that reminds you to observe it carefully. Second is a field guide. The field guide is a little book that's packed with information about birds. It's the next best thing to an expert birder by your side. It describes and shows pictures of all the birds, and it tells you which details of each bird to look for. And third, you must have binoculars. Without them, you can't get close enough to birds to identify them. In fact, the sport of birding as we know it began with the invention of the modern binocular. Compared to other sports, birding is not expensive. You can buy all 3 items, the notebook, the field guide, and the binoculars, for less than the price of a good pair of athletic shoes. And they'll take a lot longer to wear out. The art of birding begins with identification, putting a name to each bird so that you begin to know it. And the essence of identifying a bird is careful observation. Until we're quite familiar with a bird, it's not enough to just get a general impression. We have to consciously note the bird's significant characteristics or field marks. For example, what color was the bill on the bird you just saw? Was it straight? Did you notice that this marbled godwit's long, skinny bill is two-toned and actually curves slightly up? If so, you may be one of the few people with a photographic memory. But for most of us, we have to train ourselves in order to really see a bird's field marks. And this is where your notebook comes in handy. Writing down your observations focuses your attention and helps you to see. If it's not convenient to make written notes while actually observing a bird, try saying what you see out loud and then jot down your observations later as soon as you can. This trick will help to fix the details in your mind. Okay, what are the important field marks to look for when we see a bird? First and most obvious, how big is it? Try to compare it to a bird you're familiar with. For example, is it about the same size as the American robin? Or does it seem bigger, like a rock dove? Or do you think it's smaller than a robin, like a house sparrow? Make a habit of mentally comparing the size of the birds you see to ones that you already know. This is how birders estimate a bird's size. When you see a new bird, the most important single feature to notice is the bill. Some birds have huge, long bills with expandable pouches, like this white pelican, which uses its bill like a fishing net to scoop fish up whole. Other birds have bills that are long but much thinner. The snowy egret uses its long black bill to capture fish or frogs. Eagles and hawks are birds of prey. They have sharp, hooked beaks for tearing meat apart. This peregrine falcon's bill is typical for a bird of prey. Here's a bird with a down-curved bill. The California thrasher uses its sharp, powerful, D-curved bill to rake in the earth for insects and seeds. The red-breasted nuthatch, in winter, lives largely on the pine seeds that it pulls out of pine cones. It uses its little tiny sharp bill to hammer through the seed shells. Many smallish birds, such as this evening grosbeak, have bills shaped like cones, heavy at the base for cracking seeds. Most birds with conical bills are seed eaters. It's a good identification clue. If you make a habit of noticing the bill, you'll have a good start at identifying most birds. Don't let an unidentified bird get past you without looking at the bill. Some birds let you get a good look at their wings. When you do, try to see whether the wing tips are pointed or rounded. The barn swallow lives on insects it catches in midair. Its pointed wings are good for fast, agile flight. Birds that spend most of their time flying over water tend to have very long pointed wings, like the Caspian tern coming in for a landing here. Heavy-bodied, more earthbound birds, like the ring-necked pheasant, usually have short wings with rounded tips. This sort of wing is not designed for long distance, but it's powerful, good for sudden bursts of flight and a quick getaway. Long, broad wings with rounded tips are often found on birds that spend their days soaring in the sky, like the turkey vulture. The shape of its wings lets it stay up with very little effort. Turkey vultures hardly ever need to flap. A bird's wings provide a good clue as to its flight style, and hence to its identity. So make a point of noticing their shape with special attention to the tips of the wings. You should also notice the tail. Look for its length and shape and for how the bird uses it. The yellow-billed magpie has a long tail, while the white-breasted nuthatch has a very short one. House wrens tend to cock their tails up like this, but woodpeckers have stiff tails that they use to brace themselves against a tree trunk. This Nuttall's woodpecker is carrying food to its young in a hole in the tree. Even at a great distance, we can still see the broad, fanned shape of this red-tailed hawk's tail. Always take a good look at the tail, because it often seems to express a bird's personality, and it's an important field mark. Birds do a lot of different things with their feet. Feet are transportation. Feet are tools. Feet are weapons, head scratchers, and knives and forks. And so there's tremendous variation in their shapes. Just by looking at a bird's feet and legs, you can often make a very good guess about its way of life. Owls' feet have formidable toes. These are the weapons with which they take and kill their prey. The snowy owl who lives in the frigid Arctic has its legs snugly covered with feathers right down to the toes. Members of the waterfowl family, like this Ross's goose, have short stubby legs and they waddle when they walk. But in the water, their webbed feet make them powerful swimmers. Here's a spotted sandpiper, a shorebird with short legs. The spotty finds its food at the water's edge, while this other shorebird, with its unbelievably long legs, stands in the water to feed on aquatic invertebrates. It looks as if it's standing on stilts, so it's well named the black-necked stilt. Always try to notice the length, shape, and color of the legs and feet. These details are sometimes a deciding factor in distinguishing between similar species of birds. Some birds, like this northern cardinal, have trademark head shapes like the helmets of ancient warriors. Silhouetted against the morning light, the teardrop shape of its topknot identifies the California quail. No one is really sure why the great horned owl has these expressive tufts on its head. They're not horns, but feathers. And they're not ears either. The ears are on the side of the head, just like ours. Let's take another look at the northern cardinal and notice the color pattern on the face. See the black surrounding the bill and down onto the throat? Although there are other red birds in North America, none of them have this facial pattern. Here are some other patterns you'll find on birds' faces. Some birds seem to wear a hood, like this dark-eyed junco. Do you see the golden circle around this elegant trogon's eye? It's called an eye ring. The eye ring is a wonderful, easy field mark because it's usually clear-cut. Either the bird has an eye ring or it doesn't. The rings around this solitary vireo's eyes extend over the top of the bill. This facial pattern is called spectacles. And doesn't it look as if the bird is wearing glasses? The scrub jay has a light-colored line over the eye. It's called an eyebrow. Sometimes it's also called an eye stripe or supercilium. All those words mean the same thing, a line over the eye. An eye line means the dark line that passes right through the bird's eye. This white-crowned sparrow has both an eyebrow and an eye line. Eyebrows and eye lines are probably safety features. They help the bird escape notice by making the eye less recognizable to predators. Most birds have dark eyes, but sometimes the eye is an unusual color, and it may be the bird's most flamboyant feature. This male brewer's blackbird is black all over except for his whitish iris. This unusual eye color helps to distinguish him from other species of blackbirds. Sometimes the most conspicuous field mark is a contrasting patch on the cheek, like the crisp dab of white on this little black-capped chickadee. Many birds can be identified simply by the patterns on their faces. Look at the two sharp vertical black stripes on the sides of this bird's face. This is the signature of the American kestrel, our smallest hawk, which you can often find perched on wires or poles by the side of the road. The facial patterns are field marks, and they're the kinds of things that expert birders watch for when they look at a bird. Let's go on and look at some other examples of birds' field marks. For example, what are the color patterns on the rest of the body? The eastern bluebird's upper parts are entirely blue. Below, its throat and breast are red. If you see that combination, you've got an eastern bluebird. This yellow-breasted chat, viewed from beneath, is bright yellow on the throat and breast, but white on the lower belly. Many birds have two or more colors on the underparts. It pays to notice not only what the colors are, but also where the color changes. The barred owl has bars that lie horizontally across its upper breast. It also has stripes running vertically up and down its belly. Bars and stripes are field marks to be on the lookout for. White outer tail feathers accent the dark-eyed junco's tail. Juncos flash these white feathers in flight like banners, helping other juncos follow them through the woods. An intriguing theory suggests that birds with conspicuous tail patterns are the species that live in flocks at least part of the year, and their tail markings help the flock stay together. Another place to check for color pattern is on the wings. Many birds, like this northern mockingbird, have light-colored wing bars. Here's an example of wing bars from a little different angle. You can just see the white wing bars on this pine warbler at the edges of the wings. Other birds, like the American goldfinch, have dark areas bordering the wing bars. A willet standing on the beach seems pretty plain, unless it starts to fly and reveals the pattern of its wings. Then you see its dramatic wing stripes. These are some of the kinds of features that birders train themselves to look for. As you get more familiar with this process, it'll become second nature. But when you first start, you'll have to make a special point of looking for the bird's field marks. They're the visual data that you'll use to find the bird in the field guide. In this section, you'll learn how to use a field guide to look up and identify a bird. Field guides are gold mines of information. The next best thing to having an expert birder along with you. A field guide puts lifetimes of experience identifying birds right in your pocket. There are field guides for all areas of the world. Here are several excellent ones for North America. Most dedicated birders end up sooner or later owning all of these. The Peterson Field Guide to North American Birds comes in 2 volumes, one for the East and one for the West, both published by Houghton Mifflin. The National Geographic Society's Field Guide is a little larger, but it has the advantage of being all in one volume. The Golden Guide to Birds of North America, published by Western Publishing, includes all the birds of North America in one volume, and it fits neatly into a pocket. This is the field guide we'll be using in this course. However, many of the remarks apply to all of the field guides we've just mentioned. First, we're going to get familiar with what kind of information the Golden Field Guide contains. We'll do this by looking up a bird whose name we already know. Then we'll learn how to look for a bird when we don't know its name. Let's read about a bird that's well known everywhere in the United States, the American robin. When we start with a bird's name, we can find it by means of the index at the back of the book. To find the American robin, we look up Robin, American. The index works just like the names in a phone book, with the last name first. Here's Robin, American, page 244. In front of the name is a checkbox. You can use this box to check off species as you see them. On the double-page spread starting with page 244, we find the text and pictures of the American robin and some related birds. Before we look in detail at the treatment of the American robin, let's take a look at how this double-page spread is organized, because it's typical of the whole book. The first thing you notice is that there are mostly pictures on the right-hand page and mostly text on the left-hand page. This is a commonly used format for field guides. Also, this book, like most field guides, uses paintings of birds rather than photographs. In a painting, an artist can distill the essence of the species and clearly emphasize the most significant features. The next thing to note is that all the birds on this spread are scientifically related. The fieldfare, the redwing, the rufous-backed robin, the clay-colored robin, and the Eurasian blackbird are all close relatives of the American robin. A little later, we'll explain how science classifies birds and in just what way these species of birds are related to each other. Note the words robin-like thrushes near the top. This caption describes all the birds on this page. This is a feature of the Golden Guide. Each page of pictures has this kind of an identifying caption. At the very top of the page is a line of silhouettes, which compares the shape of the robin to groups of other similarly shaped birds. If the bird you were looking up was not on this page, the lineup of silhouettes could give you a hint where to look next. The American robin silhouette is black. The birds from other groups are blue. The bluebird silhouette is also black because it's very closely related to the robin. Now let's take a look at the top of page 244. The Golden Field Guide is organized into sections about groups of related birds, which are called families. And the large blue dot tells us we're at the beginning of one of these sections. This section covers the family Muscocapidae, which includes the thrushes, solitaires, and bluebirds. The text by the large blue dot gives us an overview, a thumbnail sketch of the whole family. For example, it tells us that the young of this family all have spotted breasts, like the juvenile American robin. Note that a large blue dot section may extend for several pages and include subsections preceded by smaller blue dots. Now let's zero in on the book's treatment of a single species, the American robin. We're back on pages 244 and 245. Here we see a painting of the adult male American robin, with the juvenile on the left. This book usually shows both the male and the female of each species. In some cases, where the male and female are very similar but not identical, like the American robin, only the male is shown, and the difference between the two, between the male and the female, is spelled out in the text on the adjacent page. By the picture, you can always find the name of the bird and its size. L, 8.5 inches, means that the bird's length from the tip of the bill to the end of the tail is 8.5 inches when the bird is in a natural pose. The purpose of this measurement is to let you compare the size of a bird to a bird you're familiar with. For some birds, the wingspan is also given. There are no extraneous details in these pictures. That bit of grass around the robin's feet is not merely decoration. It shows the habitat where you're likely to find this particular bird. To the left of the adult robin is the juvenile with its spotted breast. A juvenile is a young bird in its first plumage after it leaves the nest. Juveniles often present a special challenge in bird identification because although they're as big or nearly as big as the adults, they often have quite a different appearance. Especially in summer, when young birds are leaving their nests, you need to be aware of juvenile plumages. To the left of the juvenile American robin are 4 small pictures showing the bird's typical postures and flight pattern. Here we see the robin running on the lawn, standing erect as if listening, and pulling out a worm. The picture of the robin in flight shows the underwing color pattern. These behavioral sketches are not shown for every species, but when they do appear, they convey a great deal of information. Don't overlook them. Now let's look at the text on the left-hand page associated with the American robin. The first thing we see is the common name of the bird, American robin. This is the proper English name of the species, as agreed upon by ornithologists and birding organizations. Next, in italics is the scientific name, Turdus migratorius. In the biological sciences, every species of animal or plant has a 2-part scientific name. Most scientific names are derived from Greek or Latin words. For example, in Latin, Turdus means thrush, and migratorius means wanderer. The Golden Guide gives a pronunciation hint by showing which syllable of each word is accented. In different parts of the world, the same species may have different common names, depending on the language and custom of each region. But the scientific name is the same everywhere. For example, in Mexico, this bird has several different common names. One is Primavera Real, which means royal spring. But no matter what language you're speaking, the scientific name for this species is always Turdus migratorius. Right under the common and scientific names, the author presents the condensed, key information about this species. How rare or common is it? Where is it found? What is its behavior? What are its important field marks? Where does it nest? And what is its song or call like? Not only does the author describe the song in words, but in this particular field guide he also shows you in this diagram which is called a sonogram. This sonogram shows the American robin song as described in the text as a series of 6 to 10 whistled phrases of 3 to 4 notes each. There's a good explanation of sonograms on pages 14 and 15 in the introduction. Let's take a look at it. Here's a sonogram of the robin song again. The time axis goes from left to right. Pitch is represented by the vertical axis, with the higher frequencies at the top. The bird's song is represented by the irregular black lines. On page 15, there's an example of a sonogram of something you're very familiar with, a wolf whistle. It shows how the whistle is represented by 2 lines that rise and fall as the pitch changes. It pays to learn to read sonograms because bird songs are valuable identification aids. If you practice looking at sonograms while listening to bird songs, you will soon find it easy to use them. The migration of birds means that in most parts of North America, there are different birds at different times of the year. Most field guides contain range maps that show where each bird is found according to the season, like this one in the Golden Guide that shows the range of the American robin. The pink area is where the bird is found in summer. The blue area is its winter range, and the purple area is where it's found year-round. The dotted line running through Canada shows how far north the robin is likely to be found by April 1st, and the dashed line that runs through Alaska shows where it's likely to be found by May 1st. You can find more information about range maps on page 12 of the introduction. For example, crosshatching shows where the birds are only found while passing through on migration. By looking up the American robin, you've become familiar with the kind of information that the Golden Field Guide offers about each species of bird. For practice, you might want to look up a couple of other birds, perhaps ones that you're already familiar with, and study the information provided. I also recommend that you read the entire introduction. In the Golden Guide, this is pages 6 through 17. It's short, but it's very valuable. You'll want to pay particular attention to the section about describing birds on page 16. To be able to understand the descriptions in the book, you need to know the terms that birders use to describe the different parts of the bird. Refer to this page often when making your own notes so that you get in the habit of using the correct terminology. Now we want to learn to look up a bird that we're not already familiar with, whose name we don't know. And to do this, we first need to take a deeper look at how the field guide is organized. How are birds organized in the field guide? Well, they're obviously not in alphabetical order. Cranes are not on the same page with crows. Instead, similar species are grouped together. Ducks are with ducks, woodpeckers with woodpeckers, and thrushes are with other thrushes. But how are these groups of birds organized? When we look at the table of contents, we find that the loons are the first birds in the book, and the sparrows and finches are at the end. This sequence is not arbitrary, but it's scientifically based on something called the taxonomic order. Taxonomy is the branch of biological science that studies how living things are related to each other. The taxonomic order is the sequence that scientists use when they want to put living things into a list. This sequence corresponds with the order in which scientists think that species evolved on Earth. Most field guides are organized in taxonomic order. Birds that are related to the most ancient species come first. The Archaeopteryx is considered the earliest bird because its fossil remains include the oldest feathers known to science. So Archaeopteryx is the very first bird in the taxonomic order. You won't find it in your field guide, though, because it's extinct. It lived 140 million years ago, while dinosaurs still roamed the earth. But if Archaeopteryx were still around today, it'd be the very first bird in the book. Current North American field guides begin with the loons, because according to the taxonomic order, the loons are the oldest group of living birds on this continent. Next come the grebes, considered to be the second oldest group. And near the end are all the sparrows and finches, the latecomers in evolutionary history. You can see the taxonomic order in the table of contents: loons, grebes, tube-noses, pelicans, herons, and so on. Don't worry, you don't have to memorize the taxonomic order. To tell the truth, the authors of most field guides have not followed taxonomic order exactly themselves. They've rearranged things slightly to make it easier to compare species that look alike. Nevertheless, you need to be familiar with it because it's the ABCs of birding, and it will help you to find your way around the field guide. You should also be aware that taxonomic order itself is not a settled question in ornithology today. Recent research by Charles Sibley and J.E. Ahlquist on the DNA of birds has challenged the traditional sequence. Taxonomists are now rethinking the whole question of how birds are related with each other and which ones should go where in the sequence. Field guides of the future may well be organized along new lines. Here's an even simpler way to understand how a field guide is ordered. A field guide can be divided into 3 parts. In general, water birds, such as loons, grebes, and ducks, are at the beginning of the book. In the middle are many impressive land birds, such as hawks and woodpeckers. Most of these groups you probably already know. And the whole last half of the book, starting right after the woodpeckers, is devoted to the perching birds, or passerines. These are primarily the birds that sit in the trees and sing, like jays, chickadees, robins, and finches. This 3-part division of the book is a simple overview that may help you to begin to navigate your way around in the field guide. For example, if you crack the book open right in the middle, see if you aren't very close to the woodpeckers. Even if you knew nothing yet about the taxonomic order, you'd at least know to look toward the beginning of the book for a bird you saw swimming in a lake. You've learned how the field guide is organized into groups, according to the taxonomic sequence. Now that you understand this organizing principle, if you can identify a bird as a member of a certain group, then you can use the table of contents to find that group in the field guide. The question is, how do you know what group a bird belongs to? And the answer is, this is one of the main things you're learning as you become a birder. You're probably already familiar with quite a few groups of birds. You undoubtedly recognize woodpeckers, hummingbirds, and owls, to name a few. Now, as a birder, you'll start to become acquainted with the remaining groups of birds. Studying and using your field guide will help you develop a concept of the different families and groups. The Golden Field Guide has comparison plates to make it easy for you to place a bird in a group. For example, remember how we said that the entire second half of the field guide, starting right after the woodpeckers, covers the perching birds? Well, on page 202, right after the woodpeckers, is a comparison plate with examples of all the different groups of perching birds. You'll want to mark this page in your book because it's often going to be where you start in order to identify a small to medium-sized land bird. For example, if you saw a little black and white bird like this, you'd look down this page until you found number 5, chickadees and titmice, which would tell you to look on page 228 in the book. There are comparison plates like this for many of the larger groups of birds, such as waterfowl, hawks, shorebirds, and so on. You can find a list of all the comparison plates in the introduction on page 10. Here's something fun you can do with your new field guide. It'll help you get familiar with the major bird groups, and especially the birds you're likely to encounter locally. This is a North American checklist. It lists all the birds of North America in taxonomic order with the loons at the beginning. This is a checklist for the state of Iowa. It has on it just the birds that are seen in this one state. It's also in taxonomic order. There are checklists like this available for every state, as well as for many parks and local areas. One of the first things you should do is to get a hold of a bird checklist for your own state. You can get one from a natural history museum, nature center, a university, or your local Audubon society, or from a birding club. Or ask the reference librarian at your public library. There's a big benefit in tracking down this checklist. The source where you find your local checklist can also tell you about birding clubs and opportunities for birding activities that you can get involved in. And help from other birders is invaluable to the beginner. Once you've got your checklist, here's what to do. Take a highlighter pen and go down the list, bird by bird. Find each bird in your field guide and highlight its name. While you're marking each bird, be sure to read the paragraph next to the blue dot or square describing the characteristics of the group. This will personalize your book. Then, when you're going to look up a bird, you'll know immediately which birds on each page are found in your state. You'll also accomplish several other important things. First, you'll get a chance to associate the name of every bird that's found in your area with its picture. Second, you'll start to build a concept of each group of birds. For example, you'll begin to have a feel for the group called the thrushes, the group that contains the robins and the bluebirds. And third, you'll be gaining experience with using checklists, and you'll be getting more familiar with the taxonomic order. Finding your local checklist can be your first easy and satisfying quest in birding. And marking your own local birds in your field guide makes the book truly yours. Plus, it's a painless way to study and something you can do during those hours of the day or night when for some reason it's impossible to be out birding. As you continue to watch birds and look them up in your field guide, you'll gradually become more and more familiar with the different groups of birds. All right, where should you go to see birds? Well, since birds are everywhere, you don't have to go very far. Right around where you live is a wonderful place to start watching birds. Get familiar with the birds that you see every day. They'll form a basis of comparison with new birds as you discover them. Watch the birds in your own yard and in your own neighborhood. Then try out your closest parks and natural areas. The thing is, birds go where their habitat is, where they can find whatever it is they need to survive, their preferred food, water, shelter, and nesting areas. That's why places that are a little wild are often much better for attracting birds than more manicured areas. Railroad easements often provide good corridors of habitat for birds. Or else head for the water. Rivers, oceans, and lakes are magnets for birds. And one of the best places to find a large number of birds is at the boundary between two kinds of habitat. Like the boundary between a forest and a meadow. You get both the forest birds and the meadow birds, and you also find some birds who need access to both kinds of habitat. In fact, wherever two kinds of habitat meet, there is an edge, and the increased concentration of species there is called the edge effect. Good birders learn to seek out the edge. Birding gives a new dimension to the landscape. As you continue to watch birds, you learn to see the world in terms of habitat, and you'll find that every habitat has its own distinctive set of birds. Knowing the habitat that each bird needs is the key to finding that species. Travel will take on new significance as you discover the avian treasures wherever you go. Just as birding brings a new appreciation of location, it also awakens a keen sense of time and season. The migration of birds is a living tide. It flows north in spring and south in fall. And the birder gets treated to a mighty spectacle which often passes almost unnoticed by others. In spring, birders wake up with bird songs in their ears, as waves of migrants like this yellow warbler arrive for the nesting season. At this time, many birds, like the American goldfinch, have put on colorful dress. Their distinctive spring feathers are called the nuptial plumage. Most birds are easier to identify in the spring than any other time of year. In summer, most birds are busy raising their young, like this house wren, who's built a nest of sticks in a hollow gourd. Their duties keep the birds close to their nest, and all the activity involved in caring for the offspring makes it really easy to see them. By the end of the nesting season, the new crop of young birds will swell the population. There are more individual birds around in late summer than at any other time of year. And then in the fall, we get another wave of migration, southward this time. This is when we're most likely to see huge flocks of birds, like these chimney swifts which roost communally at night. They stay in chimneys at night on their way south. And even in the dead of winter, it's a good time for watching birds. Birds that you might not see at any other time of year will move south into your area for the winter. Like this red-breasted nuthatch visiting an Iowa feeder for sunflower seeds. When the weather's cold, you don't even have to go outside. That is, if you've set up a feeding station. You can sit in the comfort of your own home and watch the birds flock to your yard. The northern cardinal is a common visitor at winter feeders throughout much of the United States. Birds give you a reason to appreciate each season, and birders find that each day also has its seasons. Early morning's the best time to see many birds. Soon after dawn, most birds are searching for food. Bird activity is at its maximum for the first couple of hours of daylight. But many birds can easily be seen all day long, especially water birds like these ring-billed gulls. Some birds become active at twilight. In many cities and towns, you can watch common nighthawks flying above the rooftops at dusk. And of course, nighttime is the right time to look for most owls. Every season and every time of day offers its own unique opportunities for observing birds. Birding is an activity that you can fit into any schedule. Birding is different things to different birders. Many enjoy birding in an easygoing, casual, non-competitive manner. For others, birding is a keen-edged sport. Here are some activities that birders engage in, sometimes very competitively. One of the most popular birding projects is keeping a list of all the species you've observed in your life, a life list. Every time you identify a new species, you add it to your life list. This is a happy event in birding, getting a life bird. Birders usually record the date, the place, and other details of the identification. Of course, as a new birder, you'll probably find that practically every bird you see is a life bird, and your life list will grow rapidly, which is very satisfying. Your life list will soon become a treasured possession, reminding you of your birding successes and adventures. Many birders enjoy comparing their lists with other birders. Each year, in a kind of national competition, birders send in their list totals to the ABA. The ABA is the American Birding Association, which is the national organization devoted to the sport of birding. The ABA compiles the information it receives from birders, and each spring it publishes the results from the previous year. For example, in the 1992 ABA Area Report, we see that 890 was the total possible number of species that could have been seen in that geographical area, which covers North America. Below is a list of the birders, ranked by the number of species each has seen. The people whose names appear at the top of the lists are the champions of their sport. Other lists in this publication will tell you who has identified the greatest number of bird species in the whole world, as well as in each continent, state, and province. To birders interested in the competitive aspect of birding, these scores are fascinating, the way batting averages are to baseball fans. There are agreed-upon rules published by the ABA as to what birds you can count on your life list. Here's a summation of the rules. First, the bird must be within the prescribed area and time period when observed. For example, for a Texas year list, the bird would have to be on the Texas side of the Rio Grande rather than on the Mexico side of the river, and seen before midnight, December 31st. Second, the bird must be on the list of species accepted by the ABA for that area. For example, you can't count some kind of South American parrot that's escaped from a cage in Minneapolis. Third, the bird has to be alive, wild, and unrestrained when you observe it. Dead birds and zoo birds do not count. Fourth, the bird has to be identified by you. That means that you yourself see or hear the field marks that uniquely determine that species. Now, if someone who's with you happens to say, "Look, there's a so-and-so," before you get a chance to identify it, that doesn't disqualify the bird from your life list. What matters is that you also perceive its identifying characteristics for yourself. If so, that bird is yours. And last, the bird must be observed ethically. This includes that you have not endangered the bird's welfare or harmed the natural environment, and that you did not trespass in observing the bird. These rules are accepted by birders when comparing their lists with other birders or sending their totals in to the American Birding Association. On the other hand, when you're keeping a list strictly for your own purposes, not comparing it with others, you can make up your own rules any way you want. And of course, not all birders care about competition. Most birders keep some kind of life list for their own enjoyment. However, a great many, including some of the most well-known top birders, have no interest whatever in reporting their totals or competing with other birders. Birding as a means of communing with nature or as a quiet scientific pursuit may be more their cup of tea. One of the great things about birding is that it easily accommodates people of widely differing temperaments. Its competitive aspect can be as great or as small a part of your birding experience as you choose to make it. Every human activity has some unwritten social rules. Usually you find out about them the hard way. You break one, and people look at you funny. Then, if you're lucky, someone takes you aside and tells you the scoop. So, to spare you some possible embarrassment, I'm taking you aside in advance. Here are some of the do's and don'ts of birding and the reasons behind them. First, have your own binoculars. Don't expect others to share theirs with you. They might hand over their binoculars, but it's a lot to ask. It might make them miss seeing a bird they especially came for. It's not fair to other birders, and it can quickly put a strain on even the best friendship. The most important law of birding optics is that binoculars are monogamous. Spotting scopes, on the other hand, are polygamous. Often a birder will set up a scope, get it aimed and focused on a bird, and then invite others to have a look. Feel free to accept this offer, but don't hog the scope if there are others waiting. Do walk fairly quietly along the birding trail. Loud talking may sometimes scare birds away and cause everyone to miss the bird. If you're birding in a group, don't get ahead of the leader. The leader may be planning to show the group an especially good bird, and someone's rushing ahead could make everybody miss it because the bird would fly away. And one more thing, it's an iffy thing to ask a birder how many birds they have on their life list. It can be a delicate subject, kind of like asking how much money a person makes. But the birder may volunteer the information in time, or you may even discover the answer published in the ABA listing report. On the other hand, any questions about bird identification are fine. Although you may run into an occasional curmudgeon, in general, birders love to be engaged in the transmission of lore. You need not be embarrassed if you can't identify a bird. No good birder will put you down for being a beginner or for asking questions. Etiquette is important. If you observe good birding manners, people will be glad to bird with you and will be happy to show you lots of birds. In this section, we're going to talk about what features to look for when you're shopping for binoculars. But first, let's learn a little bit about how binoculars work. This will help you make sense out of all the information that gets thrown at you, all the technical jargon that you run into when you're shopping for birding binoculars. Essentially, binoculars are just two telescopes mounted side by side, one for each eye. To understand binoculars, all we need to know is how a telescope works. So here's a simple illustration. An ordinary magnifying glass will form an image of a bright object, such as a light bulb, on a piece of tracing paper. The image will be upside down and backwards, though. You can enlarge this image by looking at it through another magnifying glass. And you may be surprised to find that if you slide the tracing paper away, the image remains. In fact, it's clearer and brighter than it was when the tracing paper was there. Now, if you actually try this experiment, you will have actually made a simple working telescope, and it'll have the same basic parts as your binoculars. The magnifying glass nearest the object is the objective lens, and the one nearest the eye is the eyepiece. In addition, your binoculars also have a third element, the erecting prisms. The prisms are triangular pieces of glass that function like mirrors. They reverse the image and turn it right side up so that it appears normal to the eye. Without the prisms, the image focused by the objective lens would appear upside down and backwards. It turns out then that all modern binoculars are made up of these same three basic elements. At the front are the objective lenses. These gather the light and focus an image of the object inside the binoculars. In the middle are the prisms. These reverse the image and turn it right side up. And at the other end are the eyepiece lenses that magnify the image and present it to the eye. Although all binoculars have the same elements, though, there are two different basic kinds of designs, poroprism and roof prism. And the main difference between them is the layout of the prisms. Poroprism binoculars are the older design. They have a distinctive zigzag shape. And inside the zigzag are the prisms, where the light gets reflected back and forth. Roof prism binoculars are a more recent design. The objective lenses and the eyepiece are straight in line, and the prisms seem to have disappeared. Actually, the prisms are still in there. They're just concealed by a clever, more compact design. Now, compact is good. Compact is easy to carry and easy to hold. There's a catch, though. Roof prism binoculars are much more exacting to manufacture, and therefore, the image quality being equal, roof prism binoculars tend to cost more. So which is better for birding binoculars, poroprism or roof prism? Well, the high end of the birding binocular market seems to have been completely taken over by the roof prism design. Their compact, easy-to-hold design just endears them to birders. But in the mid and low-end birding binocular market, the poroprism design still holds its own because it offers better quality optics for the money. So when shopping for birding binoculars, try out examples of both kinds. It's really the only way to find out which one will best fit your hand and your pocketbook. Now let's consider power or magnification. Every pair of binoculars is engraved with a formula, such as 7 by 35. The first number is the power, or how many times as big the image appears. The second number, the 35 in this case, is the diameter in millimeters of the objective lens. The objective lens, as you recall, is the one in front, the one you point at the object. Birders usually choose binoculars that are 7 to 10 power, depending on the birder's ability to hold them steady. The greater the magnification, the bigger the bird looks, but the shakier the image becomes. Binoculars over 10 power are usually mounted on a tripod. They're not considered hand-holdable. In order to find out what power is best for you, you'll need to try out binoculars personally. Be sure you try hand-holding a 10-power binocular before you buy it. You may actually see more through 7-power or 8-power binoculars. It's interesting to note that the power of binoculars is not related to their size and weight. For example, here are two Zeiss binoculars, a little one, a Zeiss 10 by 25, and a big one, a Zeiss 7 by 42. The little one has more magnifying power than the big one. The magnifying power of binoculars is determined by the power of the eyepiece, not by the size of the objective lens. So, if bigger binoculars with bigger objective lenses don't provide more magnification, what do they provide? Well, they should be brighter. They can let you see better in dim light, such as at dusk. There are several factors that determine a binocular's brightness. First, the size of the objective lens relative to the binocular's magnifying power. Second, the ability of the lenses to transmit light. And third, the age of the birder. What, you say? The age of the birder? How can my age affect the brightness of my binoculars? To understand this, you need to know another bit of technical jargon that you'll encounter when comparing binoculars: the exit pupil. If you point your binoculars at a light source, such as a window, and hold them away from your eyes, you can see a bright circle in the center of each eyepiece. This is the actual beam of light coming out through the eyepiece. The diameter of this beam of light is called the exit pupil. The exit pupil is the best approximation of how bright the binoculars will seem in dim light. You can calculate the diameter of the exit pupil by dividing the diameter of the objective lens by the magnification. So a 7 by 42 binocular will have an exit pupil of 6 millimeters. The exit pupil is determined by the ratio of the objective lens to the magnifying power. Here you can compare the exit pupils of these two binoculars. The large one, the 7 by 42s, has an exit pupil of 6 millimeters, while the small one, the 10 by 25s, has an exit pupil of only 2.5 millimeters. The binoculars with the larger exit pupil can provide a much brighter picture in dim light, but that's only if your eyes can see it. At noon in bright sunlight, the pupils of your eyes contract to as little as 2 millimeters. At night, your pupils may open to as much as 7 millimeters to take advantage of the little light that's available. That's when the binoculars with the larger exit pupils become an advantage. They pour more light into the expanded pupils of your eyes. But if the beam of light exiting the binoculars is wider than the pupil of the eye, the excess just can't get in. The eye can't see it. So in bright daylight, when the pupils of your eyes are contracted, binoculars with small exit pupils may seem just as bright as binoculars with large exit pupils. The moral is, there's no reason to carry around the extra weight of larger, heavier binoculars if you're only birding in the middle of the day. Only at dawn and dusk do the large exit pupils become a real advantage. But there's another factor here, and this is where the age of the birder comes in. As we age, the eye loses its ability to adapt to darkness. While a 20-year-old's pupils might open to 7 millimeters, at 50 years, the pupils may open only to 5 millimeters. Therefore, binoculars with large exit pupils may not help the older birder, so a smaller, lighter weight model might work just as well. Will binoculars with large exit pupils enable you to see birds better at dusk? The best way to know for sure is to compare the binoculars in low light using your eyes. In choosing binoculars, there's one feature to look for that improves brightness under all conditions, even in bright daytime. That feature is known as fully multi-coated lenses. The term fully multi-coated lenses means that every air-to-glass surface of your binoculars, inside and out, has a special ultra-thin coating. This coating greatly reduces the amount of light lost to reflections. Ordinarily, each time light enters or leaves a piece of glass, part of the light is reflected back. That's why you see a reflection in a window. Modern binoculars have about 16 air-to-glass surfaces inside. Without coatings, 5% of the light would get lost at every surface. So before coated lenses came along in the 1940s, only half the light that entered binoculars ever got through to the eye. The rest bounced around inside, making the image hazy and hard to see. It was like trying to watch a movie in a theater with the lights still on. The latest lens coating technologies have improved the light transmitting quality of binoculars to an astonishing degree. Today, in the best binoculars, 95% of the light that enters them gets transmitted to the eye. So when you're shopping for binoculars, look for fully multi-coated lenses. All good quality binoculars will have this feature. The more expensive binoculars will have the best quality coatings and therefore will transmit the most light. If you wear eyeglasses, your glasses won't let you hold your binoculars up close to your eyes. As a result, you may see only the center part of the image. It's a little like trying to look at everything through a hole in a fence. If your glasses are only for nearsightedness or farsightedness, you don't absolutely have to wear them when you're using binoculars. The focusing mechanism in the binoculars can compensate for your visual problem. But if you happen to have astigmatism, then you really need to wear your glasses when you're looking through binoculars. In any case, it's inconvenient to be taking your glasses on and off every time you look at a bird. So if you wear glasses, you need to get binoculars that are designed to be used with glasses. You need binoculars that have something called long eye relief. Eye relief is how far back from the binoculars your eye can be and still see the whole field of view. You can observe the amount of eye relief of a binocular by pointing it at a light source and moving a paper back and forth near the eyepiece. The place where the bright circle comes into sharpest focus is called the eye point. This is the position where the eye can best see the whole image. The distance from the paper to the eyepiece is called the eye relief. If you wear glasses, look for binoculars with eye relief of at least 14 millimeters. Longer is even better. The best way to tell if a given binocular will work with your glasses is to test it with your glasses on. If your binocular's eye point is not compatible with your eyeglasses, you'll be missing the big picture. You'll also be missing a lot of the fun and possibly even the bird. Here are a few guidelines to keep in mind when selecting birding binoculars. Buy the best you can afford. Birding binoculars get a lot of use. The better the construction, the better they'll hold up. Inexpensive binoculars are not necessarily the best value for the money. If you can afford it, you'll never be sorry you bought the best. On the other hand, any binoculars are infinitely better than none. So get whatever you can afford, but get something. With inexpensive binoculars, at least try to stay with a brand name you recognize, like Bushnell or Nikon. Birding binoculars should be comfortable, and they should fit you. Lightness and compactness are important. Binoculars you feel some reluctance to take along with you because of their size and weight are useless, no matter how good their optical quality. Remember, if you don't have them with you, you can't see anything through them. The ability to focus up close is also an important feature of good birding binoculars. When a bird is close to you, the view through binoculars is truly spectacular. You'll be sorry if your binoculars won't focus up close enough. And don't get zoom binoculars. They're not a good buy. Their optical quality is inferior to most regular binoculars. Also, don't go for fixed focus binoculars. They won't focus up close. And most important of all, try before you buy. To select the best binoculars, you must choose them personally. Only you can decide how much magnification you can hold steady and how much weight is comfortable for you to carry. Only you can feel how binoculars fit in your hands and how well they work with your eyeglasses. Binoculars are the basic tool of birding. You need to be comfortable using them so that finding a bird with them is second nature to you. Here are some tips to help you quickly develop your expertise with binoculars. The first thing to do with a new pair of binoculars is to customize them to fit your eyes. Most binoculars have folding eye cups. If you wear glasses, you should fold the eye cups down like this. If you don't wear glasses, make sure the eye cups are extended like that. Next, you want to set the interpupillary distance. Everybody's eyes are different. Some are spaced far apart, others are closer together. So all binoculars let you adjust their two eyepieces to match the distance between your eyes. Hold your binoculars up to your eyes and move the barrels closer together or farther apart until the two images become one circle. It should look like this. Then you should set the diopter adjustment to match your eyes. Many people's left and right eyes differ in their vision. So most binoculars let you alter the focus of one eyepiece with respect to the other. It's called the diopter adjustment. For most binoculars, like these Bushnell birders for example, the right eyepiece is the one you can individually adjust, and the diopter adjustment is on the eyepiece itself. Other binoculars, like this Zeiss roof prism model, may have the diopter adjustment on the center column. If you're not clear about where the diopter setting is on your binoculars, consult the manual they came with. Here's how to set the diopter adjustment using typical binoculars like these Bushnell birders. Start by placing the diopter setting at the 0 or center position. Cover the barrel which the diopter adjustment affects, which is usually the right side of the binoculars. Use a lens cap, but don't just squint your eye to do this. When the eye is squinted closed, the pressure on your eyeball temporarily changes its shape and makes it focus differently. That can completely throw off your focus. Pick an object in the middle distance. Keep both eyes open and focus the binoculars using the regular center focus knob until the image is clear and sharp. Now the left eye is in focus. Next, without disturbing the focus we have set for the left eye, we'll use the diopter adjustment to focus the other eye. Let's switch the lens cap, or whatever you're using, to the other side. Looking at the same object as before, and keeping both eyes open again, turn the diopter setting back and forth until the object is in sharpest focus. Be careful not to disturb the center focus. Now remove the lens cap and look through both eyepieces at once. The image should be in sharp focus in both eyes, and your eyes should feel comfortable while looking at it. If you've followed these suggestions, you have now customized your binoculars for your own eyes. Now let's talk about spotting birds with your binoculars. Locating a bird with binoculars is a skill. It develops with experience. And at the beginning, it can be quite a challenge to get the binoculars aimed in the right direction. In this section, we'll talk about two ways of locating a bird with binoculars: the landmark method and the Zen method. To use the landmark method, find some big, conspicuous landmark near the bird. Before you raise your binoculars, note the relationship of the bird to the landmark. How far away from the landmark is the bird? What direction from the landmark is the bird? Then look through the binoculars, locate the landmark, and move the binoculars in the correct direction until you find the bird. There it is. In Japan, the traditional Zen archers used to learn to position their body so that the bow and arrow pointed in the right direction in a completely natural and instinctive way. And expert birders learn to do the same thing instinctively with their binoculars. The secret is to square yourself up to the bird. Your whole body, including your feet, should turn to face the bird. If you just turn your head, it won't work. Then you raise your head until you're looking straight at the bird. Your whole head is tilting up to face the bird, not just your eyes looking up. Now put your binoculars squarely in front of your eyes. You'll find you're looking right at the bird. Voila! On target. Practice this technique consciously for a while. It'll soon become completely automatic. Besides your field guide, there are lots of other resources to help you find and identify birds. Here are a few you should know about. Needless to say, this is not an exhaustive list, but merely an indication of the kind of assistance that's available. First, you might like to join a national, state, or local birding organization. Here are some of the main ones. First, the American Birding Association. The ABA emphasizes the recreational aspect of birding, and it seeks to further bird identification skills. Birding is the ABA's magazine. It's a bi-monthly magazine. It has very attractive photographs, and it tends toward fairly advanced material, things like challenging identification questions. Winging It is the monthly newsletter. It has more timely topics, such as where to go to see rare birds, or pelagic, that is, ocean trips that you can take to see seabirds. They also have a mail-order catalog, which has all kinds of books about birds and all kinds of birding paraphernalia, a very nice selection of birding equipment with a good discount for members of the ABA. The ABA also hosts conventions for birders all over the United States and very good places to go to see birds. The ABA works to increase the public awareness of birds and of the role of birds in the environment. For more information or to join the ABA, call 1-800-634-7736. The Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology in Ithaca, New York, is a national organization devoted to wild birds. The Living Bird is its quarterly magazine. It combines the aspect of a scientific and a popular magazine. It's both readable and informative. The laboratory also offers a popular home study course in bird biology. This is a regular college course in ornithology. You take it by correspondence. It's an excellent course. I took it myself and I highly recommend it. You can also order birding products through their catalog, The Crow's Nest. For more information or to join the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, call 1-607-254-2425. The National Audubon Society concerns itself not just with birds, but with all aspects of the natural world. It has local chapters in many areas that operate nature centers you might like to visit and offer field trips you might like to participate in. The Audubon Society also manages wonderful nature sanctuaries throughout the United States. Audubon Magazine is one of the attractions of membership. For more information or to join the Audubon Society, call 1-800-274-4201. Nearly every state has its own statewide birding organization. Most state birding organizations publish a newsletter or a journal. The Bird Observer from Massachusetts is one example. This one is Iowa BirdLife. And here's Oregon Birds. These publications are full of information specific to your own state, and they'll often tip you off about good places to go birding. They'll also help you find and make friends with other birders. The reference librarian at your public library can probably help you locate your own state birding organization. Here are several magazines devoted entirely to birds and birding. Each one has a slightly different appeal. Birder's World is a bi-monthly magazine. It has superb photography and award-winning articles. It's scientifically accurate and readable. This is a high-quality magazine of great interest to anyone who's involved in birding. To subscribe to Birder's World, call 1-800-753-4873. Birdwatcher's Digest is a bi-monthly magazine of field guide size, just the right size to put in your pocket or handbag and take along with you. It's full of ornithologically accurate stories about birds and their actions in the backyard and beyond. It's fun to read, and there are lots of articles in every issue. The personal and reader-friendly writing style makes reading these stories almost like being there and witnessing the birds yourself. Birdwatcher's Digest also puts out some very nice little booklets about birds, like these on enjoying bluebirds more, enjoying purple martins more, enjoying hummingbirds more, and an excellent one on bird photography basics by Arthur Morris. To subscribe to Birdwatcher's Digest, call 1-800-879-2473. Wild Bird is a monthly magazine devoted to birds. Nearly every issue includes a section on attracting birds to your home and backyard. To subscribe to Wild Bird, call 1-800-365-4421. It's well worth it to subscribe to all three of these magazines. I do. You may prefer one over the others, but to my way of thinking, they don't so much compete as complement each other. They will all enhance your birding pleasure and expertise. One field guide is the essential minimum for birding, but it's better to have several field guides because each one contains something unique. And beyond the basic field guides are books that deal in greater detail with certain groups of birds. For example, here's a book called Shorebirds by Peter Heyman, John Marchant, and Tony Prater about the waders, those birds that are found at the water's edge. Its excellent pictures and text enable birders to identify every species of shorebird in the world. The Peterson Field Guide to Hawks by William Clark and Brian Wheeler covers the hawks, kites, eagles, falcons, and vultures of North America. These birds are often difficult to identify. For one thing, the difference between two species may be very subtle, and for another, individuals of one species may vary tremendously. This book provides more detail on field marks and behavior than the general field guides do. If you want to identify hawks, this book will help. Another wonderful book on the same group of birds is Hawks in Flight by Pete Dunn, David Sibley, and Clay Sutton. This book teaches the skill of recognizing a distant flying hawk by such clues as shape, posture, and flight style. It's entertaining to read and indispensable to the birder witnessing hawk migration. Birder's Handbook by Paul Ehrlich, David Dobkin, and Darrell Huey is a treasure trove. It gives the life history of each bird in a nutshell, all about the courtship, the nest, eggs, and young, and the bird's food and system of foraging, and so on. It also contains hundreds of short essays on every imaginable subject of interest to birders, such as migration, dust bathing, and how birds build nests. Nearly every part of the world now has its own field guide. One example is the Peterson Field Guide to Mexican Birds by Roger Torrey Peterson and Edward Chaliff. As a birder, you'll want to take along the appropriate field guide for any country you happen to visit. How to Attract Birds, put out by Ortho Books, gives practical advice for making your backyard irresistible to birds by offering food, water, and nesting sites, and by providing plants that fulfill the bird's needs. Birds can be identified by sound as well as by sight. In fact, some species look almost identical and are much easier to recognize by their songs than by their appearance. So it pays to learn the sounds that birds make. Recorded bird songs can help you do just that. Here are some good collections of bird sounds. A Field Guide to Bird Songs, put out by the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, includes recordings of the songs and calls of the common birds found east of the Rockies. There's also a version for western birds. Both the eastern and western versions are available either on CD or audio tape. These recordings catalog hundreds of different bird sounds. They let you compare a song you hear out of doors to the known and identified song on the recording. Other tapes actually teach the listener how to learn bird sounds. For example, here's Backyard Birdsong by Richard Walton and Robert Lawson. It helps you to train your ears. It takes 28 common backyard bird songs and compares them, pointing out their similarities and differences. It's quite helpful. Know Your Bird Sounds by Lang Elliott organizes bird songs by habitat. Volume 1 is yard, garden, and city birds. Volume 2 is birds of the countryside. You listen to a fairly long passage from each bird. As the author talks about each song, you start to get a handle on its characteristics. This helps you remember the songs and recognize them when you hear them later. You can advance your birding skills remarkably by listening to tapes and CDs of bird sounds. They're the field guides for your ears. The birding field is rich with educational resources like the ones we've just been talking about. Time limitations allow us to mention only a few. These resources offer the distilled experience and insight of the world's top birders. And even though they may be available for free at your public library, many of these you'll use all the time and you'll want to own them for yourself. Birding will bring you more and more enjoyment the longer you pursue it. Birds will connect you to the world of nature, to the seasons and locale. Events that previously would have passed unnoticed, the arrival of a spring warbler or a hawk circling overhead, will start to take on new significance. And because the enjoyment of life is the ultimate wealth, learning to bird has the power to enrich you beyond measure. You have taken the first step. Happy birding!